And talking about speaking or working with the Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister of the Economy, well, I had the opportunity to sit down with him for a conversation in Kigali. That was on the sidelines of the Africa CEO. And well, it's good to see him on the other side from the private sector. And we thought that heading the tax reform was a temporal thing, but obviously now he's in the public sector. So we say congratulations once again to Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. And that was the first thing I was curious about, this movement from the private sector to the public sector and what we can expect from him as the coordinating minister of the economy. So let's start with how you're adjusting. I mean, at first we thought that your stay in the public sector was temporal, but it seems you are now in a more permanent position. How are you adjusting to this?
I think it's always an opportunity to be able to serve, especially when you're able to solve or at least be a contributor to solving national problems. So what has happened is this started as let's do the reform and then you move on. But I think I was extremely impressed with the leadership that Mr. President provided. I think everybody will attest to the fact that the tax reform became very heated, at a point turbulent. But that leadership of saying, let's do the right thing, whether it's popular or not, people will then recognize and appreciate it later on. So I think for Mr. President also, he appreciated the level of commitment and consistency and focus. And so he then decided, well, I need you to help in another area. So, and that's how it played out. I wouldn't say it's a permanent role. Nothing is permanent in life. I think it's more focused on getting things done. So we now have the opportunity to, in fact, deepen the reforms, accelerate the implementation of the reforms that have been introduced, and then more importantly, translate those reforms into results at the micro level where people can feel the impact on a day-to-day basis. So I feel like this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make those very big impacts that we have been hoping and praying for in Nigeria.
And you used to tell us how your wife was taking to vigils and all when you were in the reforms, the tax reforms. So I wonder what she's doing now.
You know, that has been very interesting. So my wife, I think now she got used to just doing vigil. And she thinks that there's nothing else she can do other than to pray and fast and do vigil. So, and I say, you know, whatever makes you feel comfortable, do it. So, and I'm grateful for, and she's not the only one. I'm from a very strong Christian family. So, my twin sister, my mom, I have many people praying for me. In fact, people who are not even related to me, they randomly say to me that we're praying for you. So I appreciate that. So I'm grateful.
You know, to a lot of Nigerians, the monetary authority, especially in this administration, has received a lot of applause, but not the fiscal. People believe that the fiscal authority is the weaker part of the Nigerian economy. What are you going to do? What are you going to do to change this perspective?
You know, I'm very familiar with that narrative where people will say the fiscal side is not doing enough. Some people say they're not even coming on the table, they're not playing their part. And I'm not here to come and defend that, whether it's right or wrong. What I'll say is that the roles are complementary. So the monetary side and the fiscal policy side complement each other. And therefore, it's almost like saying you cannot clap with one hand. You need the two of them. To a very large extent, I would say that the work of the monetary authority is not as complicated as that of the fiscal authority. You know why? The monetary authority, like the central bank, is independent and autonomous. They don't need to ask for your views before they change interest rates. They just do it and announce. We can't change tax rates without asking you, right? And if you're looking for consensus and support and agreement, it's tough. Then you take your bills to the National Assembly, you get into debates. You do budget, it's complex. So nothing of the major work that the fiscal authority has to do is straightforward. But that's not to make an excuse. What we're going to do now is show up better, more intentional, use data, and think long term so that people can see clarity. One of the areas where we haven't really done very well is in communication, transparency, and accountability of just even finding fiscal data. You go to the Ministry of Finance website, and you really can't find a lot of information there. And sometimes when you find the information is not consistent across different units of the government. So yeah, we would do better. That's the promise.
And so you're promising us that we will no longer have to look for Nigerian data from the United States or World Bank, right?
Certainly, I've seen some of my colleagues in government reference the World Bank data about Nigeria. I said, no, it should be the other way around. The World Bank should be referencing us, not the other way. And so we work on those things.
There's also the perspective that we don't have enough collaboration between the monetary and the fiscal authorities. Do you have a plan to change this?
I'll say there has been improvement in collaboration since 3 years ago, since the current administration. It can always get better. What we are hoping to do is collaboration by design, so that it's not a function of who is there or whether they like themselves, right? So there are legal frameworks within the Nigerian system about what the monetary should do, what the fiscal authorities should do, and there are even bodies bringing them together. So what we plan to do is to strengthen those frameworks and also design, if necessary, new provisions, new legal framework, new policy framework that would ensure that things are done in a more collaborative manner, regardless of who is there at the time. We want to institutionalize the reform so that they're enduring. So again, I can also say I'm very optimistic. We've always had, and I'll speak for myself as well, I've had very good working relationship with the central bank leadership. In fact, I can say to you that after they were confirmed by the Senate, the very first meeting was the meeting I set up between myself, the CBN governor, and my predecessor. And since then, we've worked together quite well.
Well, in spite of the fact that you're now the Minister of Finance, coordinating Minister of the Economy, you're still being called a tax man. I wonder how this settles with you.
No, I think I have no issues with the label. I see people still call Mr. President even a tax man himself because of what he did in Lagos State. I think at the end of the day, when people see results, they will make up their minds as to what label they want. But the labels are not important. It's the result. So for the tax reform, it remains one of the very important reforms of this administration. And we need to ensure that the implementation aligns with the original policy objectives. We co-created the policies. We are co-executing it, and we'll continue to receive feedback from the stakeholders and fine-tune as we go along. In the coming months, we're going to be issuing regulations and guidelines and orders to implement those reforms. For example, one of it is tax harmonization. Some of the excessive tax burden and multiple taxes at the local government, state levels. So we're working now with the subnational for them to enact the law for themselves to stop those illegal taxes and also to automate the process so that you can take out corruption and the money goes to the government so it can serve the people better. As of the last time I got an update, 15 states have enacted the law. So we're now following up with the remaining states. So in fact, our role in the Ministry of Finance around collaboration and coordination is not even limited to organs and units within the federal government. It cuts across the subnational. And that role, we're taking it very seriously. So we would ensure laser focus, diligent implementation of the tax reform, as well as the other reforms that will be driving from the Ministry of Finance.